another core part of our practical life curriculum is care of the environment. So first, our classrooms serve as prepared environments. In order to create this prepared environment, then we are meticulously creating and maintaining them as the adult. And then the children are experiencing a beautifully tended to space day after day, and they begin to absorb its characteristics. So why are we asking kids to clean? Because that seems kind of weird that we're having them come in and do dishes and sweep the floor and wash cloths and do some other antiquated things like polishing silver. But what Maria Montessori noticed when she was doing her observations with the children that she was working with in Italy was that children naturally notice if something is out of order or if it's dirty or if it needs tending, and they're also drawn to help. So those are they're sensitive to it at this moment, and it's also a human tendency too. So to capitalize on that, we can show children meaningful ways to care for their environment. In doing so, we can empower them with an aid to the development of self-confidence as they're caring for their environment, because as they're seeing their accomplishments with cleaning something that was dirty or helping their peers get, for example, clean plates for snack, then they're seeing that they're having an impact on the environment that they're in. So the children arrive with a natural tendency towards work, and the items in the environment call to the children. So we're specifically putting items in our environment that match their developmental needs and their developmental tendencies. And so then we can engage them in purposeful work by showing them precisely how to care for objects and the space around them. Our aim is to lead the children to physical and intellectual independence within their culture. So we want to also make sure that the things that we're doing are relevant and are serving a bigger purpose in the classroom and having an impact on the day-to-day functioning and functionality and life of the environment and the children. And we also want to be sure that we're being culturally relevant with the materials that we're putting in the classroom too. And so these activities are connecting the children with their surroundings, and it's allowing them to assume responsibility for their environment. Care of environment activities create a sense of joy and pride and delight in not only the cleanliness, but the artistic and wholesome elements like taking care of plants or pets of our human spaces, just like at home too. And in doing so, we're leading towards independence. So these activities are developing self-confidence that leads to independence in daily life. And the more independent they are, the more emboldened they are to try something new and then gain confidence because they were successful and so on. So it's sort of this happy, joyful cycle that continues.
I didn't even hear that. You did that so carefully. Thank you, Fred. Here you go. Hey guys, can you go get a rug? I want to do a work with the two of you. Get both. One rug for both of you. I want to do a work with both of you. Okay. One rug, two girls. Christy, come here. Riley, come here. Chase, please do your work on.
So purposeful work. So what is that? So this is entirely different than what us adults think work is all about. So this isn't punching in for our 9 to 5 and it's burdensome and we can't wait to leave. For children, their entire existence, particularly in this age group, their entire existence is their work. And it's the work of constructing the adult that they're going to become. So caring for the environment goes well beyond what the adult sees as the main objective. The main objective of these exercises is to rouse the children towards purposeful work. So, purposeful work is a positive activity that's freely chosen and develops the child's creative personality and motivates them to strive to a higher intellectual and physical level, both working in harmony, so physical and intellectual development. And purposeful work requires movement, and it's comprised of the exercises in the environment that are meaningful to the child's development. So we want to make sure that we're observing children, because that's sort of our number one job as Montessori teachers, and seeing what their needs are in accordance to their human tendencies, and then we're matching them with really purposeful work that gets them moving and gets them active and gets them connected to the whole environment. And so we have to know child development really well. That means that we have to really, really understand this plane of development, birth to 6, and particularly 3 to 6, and what is appropriate and what our expectations should be in accordance to typical development, but also to be observing the child for their particular interests and their particular needs. So human tendencies include many things, and this is the tendencies of all humans across time, across place, across culture, ethnicity, and they're things like exploration, independence, socialization, and self-perfection, and order and exactness. So all of these things we demonstrate to varying degrees. And so if we're watching children and I'm seeing that there's a kid that just is really wiggling around and has to be moving all the time, they cannot be still, then I'm going to find something in the classroom that is big and requires them to maybe carry something heavy like a pail of water, that requires them to move about the environment, so that I'm seeing that they need movement, and then I'm giving them something really purposeful to do so that it becomes synthetic movement. It means that they're purposefully thinking about and analyzing every move that they're making, so that all that inner construction and inner discipline is being developed. So when I pick the right test for the right student, then what I'm seeing is concentration. And concentration can look different for different children. There are children who can concentrate while they're chatting with a peer next to them. There are children that concentrate by sitting at a table that's maybe facing a wall and just really being spotlighted on their particular work. Concentration could look like a lot of movement around the classroom, but what concentration is a fixed and sustained attention to the work that they're doing for a greater purpose. So not just busy work and not just something to keep them occupied, but something that is driven by interest that's driven by our neural network and is engaging them in sort of this idea of flow, where the activity meets our interests. It's just challenging enough where it's not too challenging, but it's not too easy, and then we can really dig deep into it.
I see what you're saying. Like 2 ones, but really 11 is a 10 and a 1.
So we have to know our kids too. We have to know what concentration looks for particular kids, and we also need to be really careful that we're not biased in what we believe concentration is, because it may not be every child focused on their one activity quietly in a silent or still manner. It could look like a lot of activity too. So observation is going to be a really, really important thing that we're doing all of the time, but also being really intentional with our observation of each child. The materials are teaching the children, and the work is teaching the children because it's self-correcting and because they're learning from every bit of hands-on manipulation that they have with the work. So that's what we want them doing. And so we have these uninterrupted blocks of time. However, things have to happen in our day, like lunch or dismissal. And so there are things that we can do to protect concentration and allow children to wrap up their sort of natural work cycle as we are doing a transition. For example, if it's time to go outdoors after the 3-hour block, then you can do something calming that indicates that it's time to clean up. For example, playing a particular song or having a routine in the classroom. In my classroom, I would come and sit on our large carpet and sing, and when children were free from their work, then invite them to come over and sing with me. And as children were finishing cleaning up their work and putting things away, then they could come also and join. Jump over the candlestick. Our young children don't have the capacities and attention span yet to sit still for that long. A human tendency is movement and exploration and socialization. One of the ways, though, that we develop this inner discipline is by giving them all of these purposeful activities, because all human beings have a tendency to work and a drive to do these purposeful activities, and humans cannot live without being active. Our learning is tied without separation to movement. So we must move in order to learn. And so the right to work is also the right to give forth one's best effort. So we're allowing children both to match with work that is feeding this developmental drive that they already have, and also giving them the ability to put forth their best effort, and as a result feel satisfaction over the completed work cycle that they're accomplishing in the classroom. And so this is helping the child feel successful because it satisfies the spirit that's already in them, and we're giving them the opportunity to have many successes versus requiring children to clean up at a particular time or stand in line for a really long time. Then we're nourishing the spirit. So we're talking a lot about concentration. We're saying that it's this fixed and sustained attention driven by our neural network, and that's also driven by interest. So interest is going to be something that's really important for us to pay attention to. So what are our individual children's interests? Because they're all very different. And also, how can we make the work look as appealing and interesting as possible on the shelf? Through purposeful work, not busy work or work that just occupies them, the children are given motive and a means to focus and sustain their attention. So everything that they're doing is building their attention span, and it's attention training in reality. So, for example, with the Care of Environment curriculum, if we draw their attention to dust on a shelf, then we are drawing their attention to maybe this internal motivation to concentrate with a work where they are dusting the shelf. And it's the concentration and purposeful movement not the cleaning. That's the aim. So great, our shelves are clean, or dust free, but that's not really what we're trying to accomplish. That's just an extra benefit to teaching a child how to do some of the dusting work. What we really want is them to have an interest in sustained concentration so that they can keep building their attention span.
Can you carry these to our rug? All right, let's see here. Let's scooch back off of our rug a little bit.
And in order to lead to concentration, as we mentioned, the work must meet a developmental need and provide an appropriate level of difficulty. So this is another piece of our observation, is that we want to know what competency and knowledge and skills our children have so that we can keep upping the ante and keep making things more challenging and keep stretching this newfound attention span that they have and letting them use these new skills that they have independently. So these activities also, because we're really motivated by things that we're interested in, should be freely available and repeatable. So it shouldn't be something that is kind of like dessert, like these things have to happen first before you get to do practical life work. It should be something that they are able to be drawn to without directive instruction for us to do that work, and also that we're not limiting their ability to do that because it's their internal developmental desire that's pulling them towards that, which means that there's something that they're working through for their self-construction that we don't want to put an obstacle in front of. And this leads to this further concentration, and also if they're compelled to do this work, if it's repeatable and they're able to do it multiple times, then they're refining their abilities too, because practice makes permanent, and we don't get good at something and we don't refine our abilities at doing something only one time. So there's a lot of ways that we can get younger children or children that don't yet have that skill base or knowledge involved in an activity. For example, if a child is reading activity cards and the cards with words on them to act them out, well, if the other child's not reading yet, but they're really interested in this activity exercise, then the child who's reading can read them to the non-reader, and they're working together. I think it's really useful for children who want to do something that's a little bit beyond their current capabilities. For example, we have this beautiful bead cabinet that's really attractive and really beautiful, and it sort of seduces young children who want to touch the beads and manipulate them, and they see the older children working with them. Well, I know I've mentioned dusting already, but if we teach them how to take the beads off of the cabinet so carefully and dust the surfaces and dust the beads to make sure that they're in good shape and put them back, then their hands are still on them, but they're doing something that matches their ability, and they're feeling successful with the work. So we're thinking, okay, what is their skill set? What can they do, and how can we get them involved with that material? So another piece of this idea of concentration is mindfulness. So all of these exercises that we're doing in practical life, including care of the environment, brings about sort of an internal silence and also an external silence too, because I always think about this idea of silence and activities that bring us to silence, like when you're driving and you don't know where you're driving and you're looking for an address and you turn the radio down. It's because you need some quiet so that you can really concentrate. Concentration kind of goes hand in hand with silence. And so when children are concentrating and they're developing sort of this internal silence, it's leading towards self-construction of this sort of peaceful, responsible child through inner discipline as they go on and on with their work. And they're also getting this sort of like well-developed and healthy interior life, right? They can hear their own thoughts. They can be comfortable in stillness. And then when we are mindful, that's when metacognition and reflection can happen as well. And we can really think through either the task that we're doing at the moment, which is very concrete, which then leads to the imagination. So when they're older, they can think abstractly. So we want to give them the ability to reflect on sort of the beauty and marvels of the world and give them moments of mindful introspection. Many of us, it's our culture in our country that things are instant gratification. There's a lot of flashing lights and movement and noise, and so moments of silence and moments of mindfulness can feel uncomfortable. But when we're doing that, then we don't have a lot of time to consolidate our learning and our thoughts too. So we want to give the children the opportunity to have moments of silent introspection and mindful introspection. And that doesn't mean that our classrooms are silent. That would actually be very concerning if the classroom was silent all the time, because we also want them speaking to each other and socializing, because they're building their language skills and their social skills as well. But we can set some ground rules about the norms of our culture, that our voices stay at a peaceful tone, so that when we are having a conversation, we aren't interrupting somebody who's having a moment of deep and quiet concentration too. So all of this is helping children internalize the wonders that the world has to offer, and kind of just the basic goodness of the world. If they have these moments to really pay attention to all the little details in their world, then inner tranquility is the end result. Another thing that practical life exercises do, particularly care of environment exercises, is develop executive functions. And as a reminder, executive functions are inhibitory control, so sort of that impulse control, working memory, which is holding multiple steps or sequence in our head at the same time and following through that procedure, and then cognitive flexibility, which is being able to transition from one activity to another, or transition from one emotional state to another. So the design of the exercises gives children opportunities and experience in exerting self-control, because if they are carrying something that has water in it that might be quite heavy, and they have to make their way through this environment where there are other children working and other furniture in the way, they got to really control themselves. They can't go running, or they're going to get some instant feedback about what happens, because then there's a spill, which is also okay, because then we're going to teach them how to clean that up, another piece of care of environment, so that they can continue learning from every experience that they're having, and maybe the next time they'll move a little slower. So we're giving the children opportunities and experience in exerting self-control, also inhibiting unskillful behavior, because if they have to be under control as they're walking through the classroom versus running through the classroom, if they're getting that instant information and feedback from the room, then in and of itself, then they're inhibiting unskillful action. So we are setting up this room to be, as we said, a prepared environment, but also an environment that has many control of errors, which means that when unskillful things happen, then it's obvious. For example, in a room that is peacefully working and humming along, and there's somebody who shouts, then you can really hear that. That's a control of error. Or if the door slams, or if there's a culture of kindness and compassion and empathy, and somebody does something impulsive or unkind and unskillful, then it's going to be apparent, and ideally the community is going to support that child in developing more skillful behavior, and also support the child that was part of the interaction.
Okay. Y'all are sweet. Here. This is called a fine arts folder. I want you to take it to your bed, and we're just going to talk about the pictures. These two, and these two.
So other things that we're doing too with the executive functions are training the memory. That's a huge part of every piece of work that we do in the classroom. Practical life really lends itself to that, because when we have to remember a sequenced set of steps to follow through to accomplish a task, which could be something as small as folding a cloth and finding where that cloth belongs, or something as complex as taking, for example, the dishwashing stand, where you would need to go with a pitcher to the sink, fill up a basin, fill up the second basin, get the soap in the water, scrub the dishes, rinse the dishes, put them in the dish stand. Then afterwards, the cleanup process requires you to pour out all the water, dry everything, get everything ready for the next person, hang up the cloths that are wet. Like, that's a lot of steps to hold in your head. And so that's going from one sort of extreme to the other in terms of working memory, but we're working towards that incrementally as well. And we're also developing an ever-growing attention span. So a child who may not be able to attend to a particular exercise for more than a few minutes is going to do something that is less complex, for sure, so that they can keep developing. But at some point, then they will have developed the attention span to do something that is much more complex. So we're working incrementally to build these executive functioning skills, because children do not come to us with those, and that should not be our expectation. When they come to us in the Montessori environment at 3 years old, they definitely have not refined these skills, and typically we don't see these skills becoming sophisticated until it's just about time for them to leave us around 6 years old. But then that means that they're ready to enter the second plane of development in their elementary environments. So this progressive work is leading to this advancement and increased freedom, which is building self-confidence, because the more they're able to take on, as we talked about with this idea of cognitive capacity, if they're able to take on a new task that's a little bit more complex, and maybe they've even seen other children do, and now they can do that work, and they can do it independently without anybody's support, and they're feeling the satisfaction of this accomplished work cycle or this accomplished task, then they're going to feel a lot more self-confident too, which sort of roots children in the environment, because it feels good to be in here and it feels good to do the work. So a big part of that, though, is freely chosen work. And so choosing one's work leads to this concentrated and happy and disciplined individual. But that doesn't mean, though, that we're just letting them choose anything. They are being given bits of knowledge as they go along, and that's a requirement for the success and for the freedom of new activities, is that they have the knowledge. Otherwise, there wouldn't be freedom. It would be very limiting if you are given a task that you cannot accomplish independently, and then you can't feel confident about it. We've talked a lot about this discipline, inner discipline, and so let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So inner discipline is something that allows children to become masters of both their bodies and their mind. And these activities that we're doing in care of the environment lead children to this physical and intellectual independence. And it's brought about by repeated opportunities to engage with the exercises. And in doing so, it's building confidence. And children are able to take calculated risks in order to learn from their errors. So that means that they can independently mop or sweep a spill, or they can scrub clean a stray pencil mark on furniture, or solve any issue that may arise as they're working through the environment, and without the fear of reproach, because they have the skill set to do it, and we have the environment prepared in order for them to handle anything that comes up.
We're gonna practice Easter. Parakeets. These are.
And so with inner discipline comes inner peace and tranquility. And these activities relieve a lot of tension and anxiety and disorders, even unrest disorders like ADHD, and they lead to success and reassurance. And so that's what we're leading towards. We want children to become ordered and to feel peaceful and to feel comfortable and nurtured in their setting, because a truly free human has inner and personal discipline, and that's what we want is liberation for our children, and to give them the opportunity to build the inner discipline in order to accomplish that. Another really important task for them to develop this inner discipline is synthetic movement. And synthetic movement is not just moving around willy-nilly wherever you want to be in the classroom without purpose or without thought beforehand. Synthetic movement is ordered and directed by the mind to an intelligent or purposeful end. And movement's essential to all activity and to all learning, and it's a whole expression of the will contained in our movement, which means that when children come in, and we've all seen this in children, is I think when of an example of a child, maybe like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old who's trying to kick a soccer ball, and so they know what all the steps are. They've seen it. They've got kind of, you run up to it, you kick it with the one foot, but it might not be in that order. So their mind is telling them what they want to do, but their body hasn't caught up yet to that. There's not this coordination of the mind and body. So synthetic movement is how we refine that. So every activity that we have in the classroom is leading towards the refinement of their control of their body and their mind. And as they begin to coordinate, as they start to see their this refinement and their increased skill set with their motor control, then it's giving children great satisfaction, because as you continue to increase your ability to be successful, then that is very satisfying. And that's what we want for the children, is to feel that satisfaction by putting the work in through repetition in the environment where the materials themselves are giving them that feedback. It's not somebody who's saying, you're unsuccessful, oh, now you've gotten better. We want them to develop that inner construction on their own.
Hey guys, scoot back to right here so that I can see you. We're not going to lunch, we're going outside. Can we get Jace? Yes.
So intentional movement is an expression of the will, and it's how we carry out our desires and intentions. And that also leads to self-regulation, because if we have coordination between our mind and our body, then we may not need to tantrum, or we may not become as frustrated. Because of all of this, we're leading children to this greater physical and intellectual independence. And so it's this total independence of the whole personality via efficiency and self-confidence and self-construction. And so finally, this leads to this idea of social discipline. So we're talking about this inner discipline, but then there's an idea of social discipline in our wider community. And so what we want to do is link children with care of the environment exercises to the possibilities for making meaningful contributions to their community. And it's also helping children to adapt to their own culture and customs as they develop their person. And So when children are coming to us early on, if they're 3 years old, 4 years old, their community contributions are not the original motivation. The original motivation is their interest in this activity. And so oftentimes you will find a younger child who wants to wash the clean dishes or who wants to scrub a clean table. And that's because it's much more for them about process, because they're working through this process that their development is compelling them to do. It's very interesting to have all of this synthetic movement and to use these materials and to follow this order and sequence and precision. So that's kind of what's happening at first. And so they're not really thinking like, oh, all of this stuff is just really helping everybody out in here. They're pretty egocentric still when they come in. However, they begin with these repeated activities to perfect their motor control and their attention span and their inner discipline. And eventually, when they get a little bit older and they start to notice the world around them, then they have the skill set to support their community in a meaningful way. So first, it's just about the love and joy of working, and the children love themselves. They're sort of in this egocentric mind, which is developmentally appropriate, and because they love themselves, they love their work. And then after they've grown a little bit and have expanded their ability to have some empathy and understanding of other perspectives, then they will start to tend to the needs of the classroom itself and their peers. So by giving children opportunities to demonstrate generosity and empathy and care for their community, while at the same time feeling a deep-rooted sense of belonging and purpose and value, what we're doing essentially with the empowerment of giving children purposeful work to do is demonstrating to them the importance of their role as this contributing member of their community.
So you'll come to my house tomorrow, and then I'll come to your house the other tomorrow, right? Yeah. I'll try to sneak out of my house. When my mama make it darker, I'm gonna come to your house and sneak over your house, okay?